Okay, Sean.
In a half an hour.
Thank you.
He's not lying either. He lied.
I'm gonna go with deer hunting. I'm gonna walk miles this afternoon. Yeah. I don't just walk off the side of the road like you do. Well, that's my.
How many did you get so far this year? Or last?
Last year I shot. Who pushed the ball to you?
Morning, Sean and Barb.
Rhonda,
Rhonda, how are you?
Thanks
I'm
for.
just fine. Everybody attending today?
Everybody is attending. Bob and Henry are on Zoom. Everybody else is in person.
Okay, thank you.
okay,
Are you going out?
Yeah.
okay,
Uh,
let's call this meeting to order. Rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag
of the
of the
United
United
States
States of America and to
and
the
to the republic for which it stands,
nations
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for coming this morning. I would like to let you know that as permitted by Illinois law, all open portions of this board meeting are being recorded and will be posted on the association. By attending and participating in this meeting, you are consenting to be recorded. First item on the agenda, 4.0. Approve and adopt minutes of December 18th, 2021. Do you have a motion to approve and adopt those minutes?
So moved.
Thank you, Tom. A second?
So moved.
Mike? And corrections?
I have a couple.
Steve has corrections. Okay.
12.1, Tom's last name is misspelled.
Okay, we're missing an S after Tom's name.
Yes.
Thank you.
Then 12.3.
Okay.
It's the sentence about an inch down.
Okay.
It says at the last board meeting. That should say at the last.
At the last legal meeting.
Correct.
Okay. And that is
12.3. You see what I'm talking
6, 7, the 8th line down.
about? 8 line down.
At the last legal meeting. Okay, thank you. You're good? Okay. Anybody else? Have any corrections? Okay. All those in favor of adopting the minutes of the December 18th, 2021 meeting with Steve's corrections, please signify by saying aye.
This is the board meeting.
Hi.
Opposed, nay. Any abstain? Motion carries with 8 ayes. Next is item 5.0, treasurer's report. Steve, I will turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks, Barb.
Can you put your mic on?
Yep.
Thanks. Thank you.
So it's January and normally we talk about the prior month, but I don't have December financials today because of results yet. There's a number of reasons. We've got several managers at the association that came down with COVID, so we're waiting for information from them. But year end typically takes a little longer to do. So we're still waiting for some information back from managers that have been out. Also, the board meeting today is the 15th. It's as early as you can have it. So, I talked to Ashley throughout the week about this. And the other thing that's going on is Ashley is our project manager at North Star. So she's been kind of tied up with all the assessments and the fees, that whole cycle. This is the first cycle we've had with North Star. So she's been tied up with that. We will have, next board meeting. I just want to remind everybody that at the end of November, which I did bring to the last meeting, we were running, our actual operating income was at 80,000 versus a budget of 125. which was starting to see the effects of a lot of the labor and shortages and demands there. So we're running under budget through 11 months, primarily because of the pressures we've seen in our labor numbers. The other thing I did talk to Ashley about this week was our designated funds. So I did have her, she was able to update those. So we're still getting information out of the North Star system. So I did have an updated designated fund balance for everybody. If anyone's interested, I have a couple extra copies. I gave it out to the board. But again, this is maintained monthly, and we do have audited at the end of every year. There was some membership inquiries into it this week, so I thought it would be helpful to have an updated designated fund schedule. So I do have that available if anyone's interested. And then lastly, we did confirm with we did, I guess, book our auditors today or schedule our audit. So our audit's going to take place in March. We got them lined up. So, you know, to accountants like me, that's kind of a big deal. So that'll be like a hard deadline, but we have to have all 21 internally prepared for them to come in. So we did schedule that this week. So that was good news. I think that's it, unless you want to add anything. Any questions? Is that it?
Okay, thank you, Steve. Next, item 6.0, committee and commission reports. Does anybody have any reports to give on their commission meetings, committee meetings?
We've been quiet, it's been kind of a quiet month overall, as far as me. I have not had, as far as peer management commission, we did not. But I did want to, I feel obligated to still report a harvest report here at Allegheny and Lake. So at this point in time, the harvest report is the following: $11 and 28 goats, which is we're real close to last year, pretty much. As far as what the hunters have seen as they've been out hunting since the starting of the season, they've seen about 299 deer total. The season ends this weekend, so. As far as foundation, we had not met here this past month either, but I do want to report that Tom Holmes and I brought a 2022 Polaris 570 home last night. Weather wasn't the greatest, but we got her home, right, Tom?
Yeah, better put away.
So that is now our current raffle for 2022. It is blue in color. In my opinion, it's a robust 4x4 looking machine, a little different design, looks great. So pretty soon we'll have that out, probably at the trash containers there. Tom and I will be going also to the Scout Hunt Show in Apple River on February 12th. So pretty soon you'll be seeing that around. That's all I have.
Thank you, Gordy. Okay,
Legal Commission met on January 6th. We had a 2.5-hour meeting. I know there's a lot of spotlight on legal right now. We began discussions on a number of recommendations that we're hoping to present to the board. What we discovered is we needed some additional information on a couple of the fronts. So we've assigned some homework to bring back to our next meeting. But in an effort to bring, one concise list of recommendations, we just didn't want to come back. A lot of this has to do with the restated bylaws and declarations. Also, we had a lengthy conversation about how policies are approved at the association, and maybe we should have our internal legal commission look at that. So there's a lot of, very complicated issues. And like I said, we talked for 2.5 hours. I think we have a really good commission right now that really vets these topics real well. So we're just trying to figure out, how. So we're hoping, I talked to Sean Cottrell, who's the chair of the commission yesterday. we're hoping our next meeting is February 3rd. So we're hoping after that meeting to bring some really solid, hopefully some really solid advice to the board on how we move forward with our covenants. Two interesting things that I found, again, I'm not a lawyer, I'm a little bit out of my, I'm more comfortable with budget because that's what I do for a living, but in legal, I like listening to the conversations. But two interesting things that I found that I thought I'd share today that came up were practice follows policy. So I think you're going to hear that out of our legal commission quite a bit. So just think about that. Practice follows policy. And I'll give you an example. Sometimes we'll come up with a good idea and we start doing it, but we don't have our ducks in a row with our policies that are written. So when you have this evolving association where there's constantly new members coming in and out of committees, it's important to have your T's crossed and your I's dotted. An example is when we talk about commissions and committees. We're all familiar that commissions are they don't hold any weight that they can vote, like the board is a committee, EECC is a committee because it's got 5 board members on it. So we've already started doing that, but all our governing documents still talk about everything as a committee. So that's just one thing. This is the type of thing legal people talk about. So again, I'm just going to say it again, practice follows policy. We need to get our policies accurate. So then start following it in practice. So that was one thing I kind of learned, and I think it makes sense that we do that. The second thing is Sean Cottrell came up with an interesting term, parliamentarian. So this really intrigued me at the last legal commission, but I guess there's people parliamentarians that actually can read governing documents like we have and then render like an opinion on it. Everyone always thinks a lawyer does that, but a lot of what we do when you hear rules and with that rules and regs, when you hear spacing out, we go in and out of Robert's rules. That's all parliamentarian legislature and whatnot. So there's a couple of things we're discussing about, what we need to pass our declarations and whatnot. And there's people that are experts in this. So I'm not sure we're going to recommend that, but I thought I'd at least get that term out there for the board and everyone to hear. I kind of, as a layman, kind of look at it as kind of like binding arbitration or something. You have these parliamentarians read your governing documents and give you their opinion on certain things. So hopefully you may hear that again next month. But those are two, like I said, the practice follows policy and the parliamentarian are two things that I found kind of interesting sitting in on the legal committees. Again, our next meeting is February 3rd at 5:30, and anyone wants to join us, we're glad to have you.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Anybody else? I have a few. AECC did not meet in January. We didn't have anything on the agenda. So no meeting there. Board policy met December 21st. We're still working on some stragglers from the 6,000 section, and we are moving ahead with the 8,000 section, which is operations. And we're supposed to have a meeting next week, but that's going to be rescheduled because of some issues family issues some people are having on our commission. Nominating. A meeting on January 13th. We discussed Meet the Candidates event and also something else we are starting this year, which is an email forum for property owners to be able to ask questions of candidates. That we discussed the timing and how that's going to look. And so that will be something you'll be seeing more about, but there'll be a 9-week period where property owners will be able to email in questions for candidates, and candidates will answer, and that will be posted on the website. We, as of last night, now have 25 applicants, people running for the board. So our January 20th deadline is less than a week away. More, but we're at our magic number 5, which is the charge of the nominating committee. And then we had safety and emergency planning. That meeting took place on December 20th. The previous meeting was December of 2019. It was very interesting. It's the first time I've been to that meeting, and we went over the dam emergency action plan, added a dam checklist to that. We went over the lake emergency management plan for updates, and also the property owners volunteer policies and procedures manual. Julie has changes that she's going to make electronically, as does Sean, and then the documents will need to go to the board for approval. Just some background, our plans, other associations have requested to see our plans, so we share them because it's very thorough. We share our plan with the Joe Davis County authorities. They are also impressed with it. So this group has really done a great job of getting all those documents together. So I think that's it for commissions and committee reports. Next, item 7.0 is the general manager's report. Sean.
Okay, assessments went out last week. If you get those by mail, you should have them or be getting them very soon. And then the emails went out early last week. The online payment and the online forms are out there. We do have a tutorial that was sent in an e-blast. That'll be on the website on Monday. If you're having problems with that still, call us. We've got all the staff trained to walk people through it, but I know it can be a little confusing, but it is easy, and it makes life easier for the owners. So do that. Sledding party today, this afternoon at the pro shop. With the snow that we got overnight, I think they'll be able to do that. We did cancel the movies and potluck tonight due to COVID, and then the midwinter gathering. The campground commission also canceled that. That was February 5th here, so that's been canceled too. So go ahead.
Okay. President's report will be in the Apple Core. Item 9, property owner comments. If you would like to address the board, you have 3 minutes. Would you please state your name and lot number? And Tom, give you time.
Yes, I can.
These comments. Okay, so who would like to address the board?
Hi, Paula Weeder, 9227. I just want to praise our security department, and Michaela particularly, because she's the person that handled this. And just so you guys know, you really shouldn't break into somebody's house just to use the bathroom, okay? My friend Cindy will show girls how to do outdoor bathroom, and boys should already know how to do that. It's just amazing. She called and said that open, was it supposed to be? No, it wasn't, and we were gone for the 2 weeks around the holidays. Joe wasn't working, so we weren't out here. And the garage door was open, and the sheriff came, and they could find no evidence of anything. Nothing was taken, but when I went into the bathroom, I don't leave the bathroom that way. So someone used our bathroom, but security did a great job, and Michaela in particular. So thank you, security.
Thank you, Paula.
Edie Patel, 11209. Speaking of security, I'm head of the appeals committee, and we had a meeting last Saturday. And at that meeting, it was suggested, because we gave out three $250 tickets, that we start publishing the tickets that we're giving out, not names, since we can't do that, obviously, but so that people don't think this is the perfect place, that they know that we are giving tickets, we are upholding them, and they will be asked to pay them. Because this lady said last week, well, I didn't think it was for property owners. It was just for visitors. So, so make people aware.
Okay. Anyone else?
This is,
One sec.
I'm,
Just a second
One second,
now.
Al.
okay.
Somebody's coming up to the microphone. I'm sorry, sir. Can you say your name again? Okay.
Its question is about zebra mussels. Should I wait?
Well, we're gonna have a workshop
gonna have
on
a
that. You'll be able to
workshop.
speak at that workshop if you want.
Okay. So Al,
Go ahead, Al.
Hi, this is Al Sopchak, 189 Mustang. I just have a question on the new online features for the billing. If we could use that, that would be great. Do we have to pay though? Or can we come in after all our documentation has been entered online and then pay via check?
Sure. Yeah, you could do that. That's fine.
Oh, okay, because it wasn't clear in the documentation that you could kind of break it
Okay.
down into two pieces. Okay, but
We can add
the written documentation was actually great. I wanted to applaud the office for that information. Thank you.
Thank you.
what'd you do?
Anybody else? on Zoom?
Henry
No.
Doden,
Okay. Go
Barb,
ahead.
Yes, Hedwig, go
Okay.
ahead.
Henry Doden, 13A, 129. Number of points. It'd be nice if we let the members know how many people were attending the board meeting. I myself would like to know how many people are attending either there or by Zoom. Number two, let people know how we're doing on some of our projects. How far did they get with putting the extended pipes in for the docks?
Right.
Are we 75% done? Are we 100% done? Where are we at with that?
Right, that's good. We asked that question.
And then another one I have, what did we spend on pushing the dirt out of the dredge ponds? And what budget did that come out of? Okay, and one last thing, I would like to possibly be the liaison from the board to the Conservation Committee on the question of the zebra mussels. Hello, did I lose you?
I think you are the
You are the
liaison.
liaison.
You are the board liaison for conservation. So. Okay. Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay. We will move on then. to Item 11.0, unfinished business. I'm sorry. Consent agenda 10.0. Committee and commission changes. Recommended motion is to approve the consent agenda item 10.1, committee commission changes to appoint Carmel Cottrell to the Budget and Strategic Long Range Planning Commissions. Do I have a first?
So moved.
Gordy, thank you. A second?
I'll second.
Steve Forst, thank you. There's no discussion on this. So all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Abstain. Motion carries unanimously with 8 ayes. Now, item 11.0, unfinished business. 11.1, rules and regulations, snowmobiles. Staff first brought revisions to section 13, snowmobiles, to the Rules and Regulations Commission at their February 7th, 2020 meeting. Minor changes were recommended at that meeting, but the major issue of a snowmobile or ATV potentially falling through the ice into the lake needed further research. Sean Nordley and Julie Jansen worked on this throughout 2020, delayed due to COVID, and presented their findings to Rules and Regs at their February and March 2021 meetings. The Rules and Regulations Commission motioned to recommend the revised section to the Board of Directors for approval at their March 5th, 2021 meeting. This section was presented to the board for first reading at the March 20th meeting. Several suggested changes were put forth at that meeting. It was also suggested that Association Legal Counsel review the language. The language was reviewed and rewritten by Key and Costello. This revised language was presented to Rules and Regulations at their April 9th meeting, and they did not have any issue with Key and Costello's changes, but continued to debate the fine for a vehicle going through the ice at their April and May meetings. At their June 4th meeting, the Rules and Regulations motioned to present Section 13 snowmobiles as amended to the Board of Directors for approval. Because this section has changed fairly significantly since last reviewed by the board, it is presented again as a first reading. There was more discussion about this section, and it was once again sent back to Rules and Regulations for further consideration. The Rules and Regulations Commission reviewed snowmobiles again and has submitted a new recommendation addressing concerns raised by the Board of Directors. This section was reviewed at the December 18th board meeting and no additional changes were identified. The recommended motion is to approve the Rules and Regulations section snowmobiles as included in the January board packet. Do I have a Tom, thank you. A second?
I'll second that.
Okay, thanks, Gordy. Discussion.
I guess this section, you know, Sean, question for me, it's section 13 is entitled snowmobiles. Do we see any complications that we just also ATVs in there too?
Because of yeah, and we talked about possibly putting that in the recreational vehicle section also.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. I think that would be, in my opinion, I think that'd be wise.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, so all those in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye.
I,
Opposed, nay. Any abstain? Motion carries with 8 ayes. And great, snowmobiles. Been a long time in the works.
Good work, Rosemary.
Item 12.1, under new business, dissolve camp financing and marketing ad hoc commission. The Clubhouse Area Master Plan, Camp Financing and Marketing Ad Hoc Commission was created by the Board of Directors at their November 18th, 2017 meeting and charged to discuss, review, determine, and negotiate monies needed for the various steps of camp development, to include design and engineering fees, schematic design fees, architectural fees, and furniture and equipment costs. Also to explore and recommend alternate avenues for financing the camp project to include, but not limited to, assessment increases, special assessments, capital funding campaign, and charitable foundation donors. In conjunction with alternate financing options, the committee will research the best practices and best methods in marketing the idea to property owners to ensure total transparency. At the August 21, 2021 meeting, the board motioned to discontinue all planning and funding for camp. There is no longer a need for the camp financing and marketing ad hoc commission, and it can be dissolved. The recommended motion is to dissolve the camp financing and marketing ad hoc commission. Do I have a first?
I would love to make that motion.
Nolan, that was Nolan. Second,
I'll second.
John. Seconds, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Any abstain? Motion carries with 8 ayes. Item 12.2, dissolve Camp Architectural and Design Ad Hoc Commission. The Clubhouse Area Master Plan Camp Architecture and Design Ad Hoc Commission was created by the Board of Directors at their January 20th, 2018 meeting and charged to work with the Farnsworth Group to design schematics, draft preliminary and final site engineering plans, and create construction documents for the area from the old firehouse to the point of the peninsula with the funds that have been recommended by the Camp Financing and Marketing Ad Hoc Committee. At the August 21st, 2021 meeting, the board motioned to discontinue all planning and funding for camp. There is no longer a need for the Camp Architecture and Design Ad Hoc Commission, and it can be dissolved. The recommended motion is to dissolve the Camp Architecture and Design Ad Hoc Commission. Do I have a first?
I'll first it.
John?
Second. Second, Bob.
Discussion?
We already have Farnsworth do quite a bit of work for us and we paid them for their services. What happens with these plans now?
We own them, so we have them.
We have them, so if
Yeah, so if it's in 5 years or whenever they decide to bring this back up, we can pull them back up.
So we still maybe plan on using them possibly as a design.
It could be a discussion at the time and see if they want to continue with that. But yeah, we own the design and the plans.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Any abstain? Motion carries with 8 ayes. Okay, next item 12.3, board liaisons to committees, commissions. The amended and restated bylaws state the board may appoint a board member as a full member to any commission who shall be liaison to the board. Following the resignation of Mike Harris from the Recreation and Rules and Regulations Commissions and the AECC, a new board liaison must be appointed to each. The recommended motion is to appoint the following board liaisons to commissions. For AECC, we have Bob Ballinger, Barb Hendren, Tom Ohms, Gordon Williams. Have any other volunteers?
Nolan Mullen said he would do that.
Nolan? Thank you, Nolan. For recreation,
John Anderson said he would do that.
thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
And for rules and regulations, I'll take that one. Barb Hendren.
Thanks, Barb. Thanks, Nolan, for getting on the other two.
So do I have a first for that motion?
So move.
Tom, thank you. A second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Gordy. Discussion?
Thanks for everybody getting on there.
Yes, I'd like to thank you for volunteering. Okay, so all those in favor, please.
Pardon
signify-
me. Yeah, Sean Cottrell, Chair ACL Legal. I just had a quick question as far as the composition of AECC.
Okay, that's not we can discuss that later, but this is not time for property owner comments right now.
No, I'm actually making this comment as a point of order because my question is, the bylaws indicate that quorum of the board is 5 members. 5 members sitting on AECC, I believe, would constitute a meeting of the board. So I have a question of whether or not that has been considered, and if so, like, I mean, that's the question. Has that been considered?
There's 5 on there.
Yeah, it's been discussed.
That's what you're saying, that as a board.
Yeah.
Yeah, quorum for the board on the bylaws, Article 9, Section 10, say that 5 members of the board is quorum. So I just want to make sure, I know that there were some issues with open meetings and things like that. I just want to make sure we don't run afoul there. And then I also had a question as far as when the president is sitting on that committee, sorry. The president is an ex officio member without vote. So I was just wondering, like, is the board like just okay with not having that vote count, or are all those times when the president would vote, does that potentially disqualify those votes?
At the president, when I'm sitting on the AECC, I'm a member of the AECC, so I can vote.
But the bylaws indicate that the president, because, and I believe it's to avoid sort of like the appearance of impropriety or anything like that, because the board president is the one who appoints the chair of that committee. I believe that's why the bylaws indicate that the president shall serve as an ex officio member without vote on all standing committees and
Right,
special committees of the association.
Sean, let me answer these for you, probably Monday morning, okay?
Well, I mean, I'm pointing to the section in the bylaws that you know, are probably going to inform this vote, because it does seem like having 5 members on there does constitute a meeting of the board of directors. I mean, if 5 of those members agreed to make a decision, they would carry the weight of the entire board according to our bylaws. I just want to make sure we don't run afoul of it.
Okay. Okay.
And then, yeah, and then the section, bylaws, Article 12, Section 4 speaks to the president and the role of the president on standing committees and special committees and commissions. I mean, the reason I bring this up is at the most recent legal commission meeting, we've been reviewing to identify where in those documents we need to do those updates. And this is one of those items that we flagged. So I just want to make sure the board is aware before casting the vote today. Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Any abstain? Motion
I'll
carries.
abstain.
Okay, motion carries with 7 ayes and 1 abstention by Henry. So now on item 12.4, we're going to have a capital projects update. If I could have a motion to suspend Robert's Rules of Order. Mike, thank you. A second.
I'll second.
Was that John?
Yeah.
Thank you, John. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstain? Okay. Thank you, Sean.
Okay, flood mitigation, there's really not any updates since the December board meeting. We're waiting on the report from CMT. I did hear from him right after the holidays, and I'll have that here by the end of the month, but I don't have that yet, so that'll be more of a discussion next month and possibly a workshop next month with the engineer here. For dredging, same, I don't have any updates for that. I did say in December, I'm going to be meeting with Frentress to talk about next steps and how to tackle the lake as far as where we're going to be pushing silt. I've got the building inspector working on some measurements for us for there that we'll need to decide how we're going to dredge that. And then for Winchester, that report also, as I said in December, is due at the end of this month. So not much as far as those 3 projects. I do want to bring up the Memorial Pavilion, though. It's been asked that we discuss that. There is money in the designated fund for the Memorial Pavilion. There's $30,337.60. And then there's a Bob Maynard Pavilion Fund that has $2,205. Now that the camp commissions have been dissolved, the pavilion was never a part, it was a part of camp as far as the placement and the design, but as far as construction, it was never a part of camp. But now that the clubhouse area has been pushed back or longer, I think it's time for the board to decide, you know, what are we going to do with this pavilion? Do we want to get going on it here sooner rather than later? And where's it going to go? What's the look of it? And what's the role that the pavilion will play, you know, for the future here? I guess I'd like to have a discussion about that today, get some input from the board on if this is something we want to start looking at, talking about, or not quite ready yet.
Sean, this is Bob. Am I correct that a few years ago, the board had allocated $34,000 that we were going to commit to this project, but then we later withdrew that money due to a budget crisis? Is that correct?
In 2012, 34,000 was budgeted in R&R from the Budget Commission, but then they pulled that project, and it never made approval from the board. So yes, that was in 2012 from what I researched this past week.
So when we have this discussion, I think we should discuss whether we're going to recommit that money or not.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know that this money, basically $32,500 is enough to get a pavilion. So there's probably gonna have to be some association money involved, I would think. I don't know that for sure though, so.
How much does the pavilion cost over at the campground?
That will be just under 40,000.
Okay.
I had.
Thank you.
Drawings for that, and at the time, I believe it was when camp first started, Mary Haney was pushing it to get it done, so I gave her the conceptual drawings. She still has.
I think I have.
You have them now?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Who did those drawings, Mike, do you know?
Oh. Some guy that did the school.
Oh, okay. Is it, it's a different party, it wasn't, yeah,
No, yeah.
okay, that's okay.
Jill has her hand up right there.
I'm distracted. No, I'm just kidding. Third is I would ask that it would be started. 2 individuals have contacted me on Facebook Messenger that they were some of the original donors of it. And it's been 10 years. One of those actually moved away and another one is just sold and is moving away. So we'd have to start the project or just return their money at this point, I would think, after 10 years.
Yeah, and I'll have to look and see what was said when they were soliciting for donations and all of that. Nobody's contacted me, so I guess if they're interested, they should call me. But, I mean, I got here in 16 and the thought was, okay, we're starting to look at Clubhouse, so let's just wait and kind of see what's going to happen in this area and then what the look is so that we can kind of, everything can mesh. So that was one of the reasons I know that was kind of delayed for that. But now that, again, we're in this situation where that's not going to happen, it's time to start thinking about what we want to do. And if we want to put this, and is it here? This is the original location, if we're going to do something here in this building for office space, it might take away from some of our big space here. So if you had a pavilion right next to us, as far as rentals and that, it might help out, in the summertime, if you could rent this space, or you could have meetings here, but you could still rent the pavilion out, or if you had a bigger group that wanted both areas, I mean, that would give us some options for rentals. And rentals have been quiet the last 2 years, but Kirsten was telling me yesterday, they're starting to get calls. So I think that business will come back up. We don't do a lot of business, and we're certainly not in the business of, banquets, but people do like to rent this space because of the look, and to get their families from Apple Lake a place to meet. So I think those are things to consider.
I think it would be interesting to see the drawings
Okay.
that were made up.
They're awesome.
Yeah.
They really are. Yep, I agree.
And know what kind of size they were looking at that time.
Okay.
And over the weekend or this past week, I was at an Amwood Homes Convention and they talked about stability of the lumber market. And they look for that to be very volatile towards all the way through this year and halfway through next to stabilize as far as pricing and money's available to us on that pavilion and everything as far as cost. But that's what they're looking at for like the volatile lumber market right now.
Anyone else? Comments,
Yeah,
direction?
just, can we get, I guess I wasn't prepared to talk on that today. Can we get some of the original? I just know the Memorial Pavilion because it's on my designated fund schedule, but does it have to be a pavilion? Did you guys decide where to put it? It's memorial. I don't know a lot about it. How do I find information out what it even is?
Yeah, I kind of agree with it.
Yeah. Like would we do a see a big rock somewhere? Yeah.
Okay, I can work on that. Try to find some information.
Sure, sure, Paula. It's something I have to check. Does the pavilion have to have electricity? Is that something that it needs to have or another suggestion might be looking at putting it somewhere along the Batham Trail. Now, no, they couldn't use it for renting, and we have to consider that. But if it was along the Batham Trail, that would give us a place to do kids camp activities in that area, which is really good for doing like stream work and stuff like that. And could also be a nice colorful place for families to pick up or whatever. But if it needed electricity, that would not be a good idea.
The foundation has talked about that possibly being their first big project when they get to that point, and that would be a location that they've talked about. And actually, they mentioned solar down there for electric, so there would be lighting in that pavilion, so that.
If we put it on the roof.
Yeah, exactly, not on the ground. So, but that has been discussed as an option and a good place for something, yes, definitely.
That'd be cool if you could merge their finances together.
Yeah.
That's some foundation money. Pretty cool.
Yeah, true. Anything else you guys want and I can bring this back? Get started.
Yes, Mark.
As long as you're asking questions, it sounds like Sean's asking all of us for a second.
Yeah,
I would just like
sure.
some clarification regarding parliamentary procedure and the point of order, because my understanding is that's when you are actually making a rules violation in the process of your meeting. I understand that correct? So to back up previously, it didn't sound like anybody was violating any of the rules that you were all speaking of there. So could the board get some clarification on what the definition of point of order is? I don't believe you can just voice your opinion about something, or if there's something minor that doesn't really affect the property owners or their membership. That's not a correct use of the point of order in parliamentary procedure. So if you guys look into that.
Sure.
For the candidates' benefit, future candidates and future board members. We appreciate that.
Sure.
So they run the next month then?
We can continue to discuss it, yes, definitely. I think it'd be more, yeah.
Yeah, we'd like to see what that original.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, that's fine. I've got to find them. I know
Yeah.
at some point I was given them, but I've got to look for them, and they might be in Tim's office too.
Be a good start.
I know that we've got them. Let me get as much detail. Bring that back.
Okay, that'd be great, Sean.
Okay.
Like you're still on capital projects.
Yeah.
Flood
Yeah.
mitigation, can you just, where are the poles at?
I think it's completed. I've got to check
Okay.
with Frentress, but I know they pulled off. But I've got to check with them and make sure that everything got done and it was right.
I know my doctor.
They moved out, so I'm pretty sure it is, but I haven't talked with Frentress over there to get everything, all the details yet, so.
It's good to hear.
Yeah. Anything else on capital? Okay.
Okay, thank you. So can I have a motion to reinstate Robert's Rules of Order? Tom? Mike, second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay. Now. Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn, Mike? Okay.
Mike, yes.
Thank you. And now, that was a kind of a short meeting, so want to just go into the workshop on zebra mussels, or do you want to take a break?
They're all gonna be like that this year.
Only 48 minutes, that's usually just the first. No.
Sean, you ready to just, let's take a break, 5 minutes.
Oh, really?
I don't know.
You know, Gordy?
Take over anytime.
Sean, I'm sign out.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sean.
Hi, Rhonda.
Bye, Barb. Thank you.
I did say, to Joe Rush, you want to be a part of this? And he thought, well, this is kind of a discussion for the board and for the membership. So Joe is not with us today. If we have questions that we want for Joe, I can certainly bring those and get those that. But so I guess let's get started. This is an open workshop, so anybody can comment or talk, from the audience here or from Zoom. So I guess that's where we start.
Okay, Sean, let me start off the workshop with the first question that we have to ask is, before we go spending any money on remediation of the zebra mussels, how are we gonna figure out how to prevent them from coming in the lake once we get it cleaned? And this is the $1 million question. The removal is only going to cost us about $700,000, but it's going to cost us a big amount of money if we get rid of them and they come back again.
What's the chance of come back?
Yeah, and here, education, but I don't think it's feasible to have people down at the launch all the time to wash boats. Now, Dr. Hammond said hot water. So if the board wants to put a hot water pressure washer down by Old Maintenance, so people can wash with that. But I think it's gonna have to be education. I don't think, it's not feasible to have staff down there doing that.
Well, like I said, how many times do you want to spend $700,000? Amen.
John Henry, state of Texas has a $500 fine if you're caught transporting the mussels.
But how do you know? How do you know that?
They inspect the boats. Washington State has inspected over 5,000 boats coming across their state lines, out of which they found like 23, I think it is, last year that were contaminated.
Were you suggesting we have staff down there checking every boat?
Well, the big thing is with our lake is we don't necessarily need to check every boat. We just need to check the boats that go to different lakes. And if we would get a list of lakes that aren't contaminated, and it should be with more than just the zebra mussels, that flea or whatever it is. And then you ask the boat owner and, and maybe some visual inspections from time to time.
Your two biggest.
The other thing that's crazy is we don't even know the trailers that down in the marina parking lot don't have numbers on them. We don't even know if they belong to our lake.
Well, the boats that are in the lake belong to our lake. We know that. So
we do not know that. There's been cases where people have found and seen boats that do not have numbers on them and reported it.
Yeah, okay. Here, Lake, a big one, and then the Mississippi is the next big one that our boaters go to, and both of those have zebra mussels. So just so
we
you
have
know,
a number of people that fish the territories and fish Lake Carroll,
Lake Somerset.
Hey, Sean. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, this is Steve Nelson here. So when it comes to inspection, I don't think there's any foolproof inspection because as long as there's any moisture in a boat, the veligers are basically microscopic and you will not see them with the eye. So any boat that comes in from outside the lake, inspected or not, is really prone to bringing back zebra mussels into the lake if we were to ever achieve eradication.
Yes, but the big thing is if the boats are thoroughly allowed to dry.
Correct.
And that can make, the difference there can be, it could be done in probably 5 days out in the sun on a windy day. But if you park it where it's not getting the wind or you park it inside, then it's going to take longer. And we need to get this publicized and people with knowledge of it. And the fact of having a big fine for bringing them in might not solve anything, but it might have some people second guessing themselves about putting a boat in within the period that they could still be carrying.
But I agree with you. So if we were able to guarantee that every boat is completely dry in every nook and cranny, then maybe we could say we're almost have a foolproof method. But other than that, contamination will occur. It will occur.
Right. Okay. A 10% bleach solution will kill the zebra mussels. So, you know, maybe you're talking 10 gallons of bleach on a busy day to make 100 gallons of spray. No, not into the lake. You put an area up by the old maintenance building.
Well, that's still in the watershed.
Yeah, that's.
Well, yes, but you have a distance and hopefully some of that will dry out before it makes the watershed. And at that stage, it should be so diluted that it shouldn't make a huge difference. Okay,
I don't know.
you know, you're talking about living with the zebra mussels. Well, they're eating what the fish eat. They're competing on the food source. So a lake free of zebra mussels is going to have a better fishery than one that does not.
Has a very, very good fishery down there. They've had zebra mussels for a long time. They have a very good fishery, Lake Carroll
And
does.
fish also feed on minnows, where zebra mussels will not.
So we had a couple of people in the audience who wanted to speak. First one is Paula.
To the question of drying out, most of you know that I have a house in northern Wisconsin as well. And they discovered that zebra mussels had come in this summer on a pontoon boat from Illinois. And I thought, how the heck could those little guys still be alive? They drove at least 6 hours up there and all of it. Zebra mussels can live out of water for 30 days. That's a long time to ask somebody to dry their boat out.
Yeah.
And as Steve Nelson mentioned, excuse me, that I can never say this right, the villagers.
Villagers, yeah.
Village
people.
The village people. The village people are microscopic and there's no way that we're going to catch those. The gentleman from Earth Tech said we needed 120-degree water to kill them. We put in 120-degree pressure washer and you guys put yourself up, I believe, to be sued up the wazoo when somebody burns themselves because that's burnable temperature. Plus the fact that pressure washers, boat pressure washers, I looked those up. Most of them imply that you have to be taught how to use these things. And that would imply that we would have to have staff down there. I did read that they can be killed at 104 degrees. So it's still kind of a hot water. But those are a couple of things that I discovered after the Earth Tech presentation.
Okay, thank you, Paula.
Thanks,
And Mark had something to say. Mark Cosgrove.
You know, when you start talking about selective inspections and whatnot, that's kind of what I think Kevin's alluding to, the boats that they think they know, because you don't know every boat that goes in and out of this lake. It'd be impossible, or well, I wouldn't say it's impossible, it'd be a lot of man hours to understand how many boats go in and out of different bodies of waters and whatnot. It just seems the logistics for this are so widespread. You can't be selective and just say it's the guys that fish here and fish there, because people might take their pontoon or their deck going somewhere else. If you're gonna do inspections, that's gonna be staffing. You can't do it with the current staff. And if you're gonna inspect every boat and power wash every boat that comes down to the launch, you're gonna have a line of boats up the ramp and around up to the parking lot. Do you ever see it on a Saturday morning when the guys come out to fish or the gals come out to fish or whatnot? You're gonna have so many grumpy people out there because they want to get on the water at 7 a.m. And with the line being an hour and a half long with Disney World, they're not gonna get on their ride until noon. We've already seen comments about our overstaffed budget here and the money we spend on budgeting. You're gonna hire more people to do this. And it's not just gonna be one staff. I can't imagine. Yeah, it would be seasonal, but how many people are coming down and do that seasonal? Driving your boat. Paul had an excellent point about that, and I've read about the length of time, and I can only read about it. I'm not a scientist. I do appreciate what Dr. Hammond brought to our attention. Well, what if it rains and your boat gets wet again? On the 5th day, when you think you've killed all the billeters or the live mussels, the adult mussels on your boat, and it rains 2 or 3 days in a row, is that moisture going to impact or reinvigorate the mussels? So you think you drive your boat, and you go back in the water, and it's, we reinfest. Yeah, we can eradicate. I believe what he says that they can eradicate the zebra mussels in the lake. At what expense? 500, 700, 800 million, whatever. $1 million, that's a $400 special assessment, Roger, seriously. Given the number of property owners we have. That's really, in my opinion, just my opinion, not a lot of money to clean our lake. But the $1 million question, as George said, is you want to pay that $1 million every 5 or 6 years when the lake is reinvested again. Because I don't think you're going to be able, they're very ferocious, voracious, whatever you want to call those critters, at breeding and being reintroduced to these bodies of water. Our bass club, and I think Bob is a member of the bass club, Mr. Bellinger, they do their trips out to the Mississippi. They're never going to eradicate the Mississippi. We don't have enough money in the globe to do that. And you go there and come here, they're back again. So given the logistics for that undertaking, it seems more financially responsible to do some type of maybe mitigation and management plan. Not saying don't consider the cost of what Dr. Hammond presented to us, because I would like to see it clean. We bought a new boat in 2020. I don't want to pull it out and have to clean the damn things off of it at the end of every summer. And I know they're in Presidents because I've seen them there, had a few in our boat this year. So it's just my 3.5 cents inflation right now.
I thought, Mark, during Dr. Hammond's presentation, I thought you had a good question about if we were to treat these, what about people with water in their live wells?
True.
What about
in your engine system? If you have an inboard outboard type motor, there's water that, if you run your engine and whatnot, it's going to get up to operating temperature and most likely kill that or kill those in there. But once your outdrive is in the water and they're in that area and they do go inside that system, they're breeding inside that system.
correct?
I do think possibly you're going to see some folks with mechanical failures on their boats pretty soon because if they're on the intakes and whatnot, they clog up the intakes and the water lines and whatnot. You might have some engine shutdowns.
I think what
guys are out there.
I remember Joe Rush talking and what they recommend at Lake Carroll is even if you're not going to use it, make sure you get down at least fired up and run it for a bit, to help prevent that. Just
exactly
take your trip down and start it out.
Even if you go out to the dock and run it for a half hour and just get your operating temperature, maybe cruise around your bay and come back, at least you're making an effort to kill the ones the villagers that might be in there.
Sure.
I really thought that the presentation, I know he's a salesman, he works for the company. He did make that comment, but he also comes with the credentials to really speak about what he's talking about. I thought he made no bones about being the subject matter expert. He's even that his knowledge of the chemicals and how they can eradicate them. But it comes at a cost. It comes at a much greater cost if you don't prevent it. And I just don't, unless you lock the lake down, prevent people from outside coming in, it just seems like a very, very unlikely task that you're able to surmount.
If I could interject into this. This is Al Zapchik, 189 Mustang. This week I presented the board as well as the Conservation Commission a document, and one of the sections in there that I brought up was the section on boat launch procedures. After talking to a couple of board members, Mike Harris could probably give you some information on this. They used to have a full procedure that was documented on how to get a boat into the water, which include inspections. And it was quite lengthy. And it took a long time to go through an inspection on the boat. Now, as far as the live wells, as well as the ballast tanks, I think that it's important that not only do we flush those out with the proper device that handles this, but I still think we need to purchase an item as a hot water power sprayer. And if it costs us money to staff, maybe there is a launch fee. I understand launch fees are not acceptable, looked at very nicely, but maybe that is where we need to go to ensure that the lake is properly taken care of. But I documented all these procedures as well as policies that probably need to be looked at and brought back up to date when we were speaking of keeping the lake clean. And Steve, I know you are probably on board on all this. This is going to take an effort, okay, Steve Nelson? And you know that this is going to help the lake if we do eradicate the zebra mussel. So I'd like to hear some opinions on that. I'd like that document to be posted, or I could post that document. It's a template that needs to be expanded, but I think for the future, it's worthwhile. Thank you.
So on some of the designs of these boats, I just want to add, the intakes are fully screened. How you gonna wash that full intake with a screen that prevents anything large to go through it, such as weeds and things of that nature? And the OEMs put the screens on there for a reason. You can't take them off. You're not gonna get enough hot water all the way up that intake tube to kill everything you need to kill. Even if you have a washer.
Turn the back with the beard.
Mike.
Oh.
Thank you, Tom. I'm gonna try for Santa Claus next year. So as we talk about eradication, there's a couple of thoughts that cross my mind. Number one, when we think of the 5 tributaries where water is flowing into this lake, we have to consider that their zebra mussels may be in those tributaries. They're not a part of this. So if we're going to think about eradication, you've got to think about spraying copper sulfate in those creeks upstream from our property. And that represents a bit of an issue for me in terms of gaining access to that water. The second point, migratory birds that may land in Lake Carroll and then travel here. Villagers can stick to their web feet, and therefore migratory birds could be transporting zebra mussels here. I just question the whole concept of eradication, and is it practical to think that we can do that on a lake with these characteristics that we have? End of discussion.
That's one of my major concerns also is the article I read about the killing of the flathead minnows, which looked to be a very large sum of flathead minnows for some reason were killed in that treat method. And it wasn't a hot method at all, because Dr. Hammond explained it was a normal treatment. It wasn't something that was just too hot for that lake. So another concern of mine would be the bait fish in this lake. And how many bait fish are we gonna kill in this lake? And of course, we all know our larger fish now feed on bait fish also.
I think Mike had some great points there, especially the watershed that feeds into the lake and Hell's Branch. What's feeding that? And is it possible that they're in that? I think, I recall Dr. Hammond mentioned that they would have to be studied or something, the watershed up there coming down before they, because you can't say yes or no, they're in there without looking at the water that's coming in. What Gordon said, I think was a good point. But Hammond did, you know, I don't know that it's a guarantee, but he did show where they would recover at a certain amount of time after the treatment, you know, at what level and how fast. It didn't seem to be a concrete answer.
I think when our big fish are gone, they're gone. The others will recover the.
Right.
The larvae. Plankton, yeah.
Right.
But.
It wasn't clear that it would kill all the fathead minnows though, but a substantial amount of them. And then I think Joe even commented on it that certain of the swan fish, the little ones that are maybe 2 weeks to a month old might be impacted by that also. But those are the ones that, since they breed regularly in the lake, they probably would recover at some point.
In his discussion there with Dr. Hammond, it did bother me just a bit because I worked pretty hard to help get this fishery back up here. His lack of, well, you guys talking anyway, that comment that he made kind of resonated with me a little bit, kind of set me back a little bit because I put a lot of time and effort into helping make this a better fishery. So
right, there was kind of a nonchalant comment that I thought,
yeah,
I don't know if I would have thrown that out there.
That didn't resonate well with me. Thanks for that.
This is Al Zopchek. I'd like to interject on this, just to let you guys know. That was brought out by me, and I told them that ACL has a plan usually to stock fish on a yearly basis, okay? As far as checking the streams going in to ACL to see if there's any zebra mussels in, that's part of the plan from Dr. Hammond. He has to test these waters to see if there's any microorganisms in those streams to see if they need to be applied with the mitigation aspects of this whole project. As far as moving forward, one of the sections in that document I gave talked about monitoring, and that would be important as a follow through to make sure that we actually put some monitoring devices in so that we can check them on a regular basis to make sure that there are no hot spots on the lake that we have to deal with. And this document was very thorough and bringing all those parts together. It was also brought out by Dr. Hammond that there, by no means, he did not want to, he wanted to make sure that no fish, absolutely no fish in the lake would be impacted. And he was pretty adamant about that during his recording. Thank you.
Another comment, please?
Yes, Paula.
I checked, and according to both the federal and state DNRs, eradication of zebra mussels does not exist in their mind, okay? He has proven eradication in small bodies of water, and heaven knows he's proved it in intake systems, but we aren't an intake system. Water as large as ours.
Just so you're aware, Lake County, Illinois is in the process of putting together a plan to eradicate zebra mussels on 30 lakes and streams in that area. They want to get rid of all the zebra mussels in Lake County, Illinois this year. And I'm working actually with Dr. John Sonnenberg on a document that hopefully we can get funding from the state of Illinois for both areas. But they've started with 2 lakes. They were going to go to 8 lakes this year, but they're going to 30 lakes and streams. And this has been brought out.
Yeah, let Paula finish, please.
Paula wasn't finished.
I'm sorry, I thought that was, I yelled at Sean and it was Al. I'm sorry.
Yell at him again.
Okay, I'll take care of it.
Okay, Paula.
There were, so this has never been done on a lake our size. I am not saying that we shouldn't do it, but Dr. Hammond said that he already had a contract on a 400-acre lake in New York. I would suggest that we don't think about eradication until we are able to see how does it go on that lake. And we should have direct contact with whoever is managing that project outside of him on that lake to find out how did it work for them? Were there any unexpected outcomes? He's charging $100,000 consulting fee. Were they able to get their $100,000 worth of consultation from him or someone else from the company? I don't think we should be the guinea pigs on this. Also, he is doing a project with the Minnesota invasive species section of one of the universities up there. I would strongly suggest that we contact them. They have not printed their results. They were in data analysis the last time I checked. And again, they were doing a small portion, I believe a bay of one of their large lakes. What is their assessment of the possibility of total eradication? I think there's just a lot of steps that we need to consider before we go running off and spending $700,000 and doing a special assessment for $300 or $400, especially since people don't like to have to spend extra money.
Hey, we got scolded last year for
Hey,
27.
Paula?
Yeah, this is Steve Nelson.
Yeah, Steve Nelson. I can address what the Minnesota Aquatic Invasive Species Research Center suggests, and I brought that up in the conference call with Dr. Hammond, and he did not agree with their findings. But as of 2018, this is after the treatment of their lakes in Minnesota, that which he did, their decision tree for deciding do you treat a lake or not, it says if the spatial extent of the zebra mussel infestation has not been well evaluated, if the zebra mussel population is not localized, treatment is not warranted. That's what the University of Minnesota and the invasive species program, their conclusion was in 2018. Now, has that changed since 2018? But this was after they did the work with Dr. Hammond on the 5 or 7 lakes up in Minnesota. So that could change. And I have other stuff from the Colorado Parks and Wildlife, Arizona Game and Fish Department, California Department of Fish and Wildlife, National Park Service, and the Bureau of Land Management said this was April 2019. So again, it's almost 3 years old. There remains no viable control methods for zebra mussels in open water systems. Now we know Dr. Hammond's chemical kills mussels. There's no question. The research has shown that it kills them. It does a great job, but it hasn't been tested on a lake any larger than, I guess Highland Lake is 110 acres, which they started their program. But the only successful treatment I've found is a 30-acre lake, and that was in a quarry in Pennsylvania that occurred in 2017 using his product. It kills them, but it hasn't been proven on a lake this size. And once they're gone, there's no real preventable method to keep them from being reintroduced because they're all around us. So, I mean, you could treat them, you could eradicate them possibly, and you'll probably end up in a cycle. You know, it could be 1 to 7 years where you go back and do the eradication process again. And that may be an acceptable alternative. Or you could do spot treatments to kill them, say on the jumping rock, and then go back in a couple of years and spot treat again. But for total eradication indefinitely, I think that it hasn't been done in the United States yet. Or perhaps.
Quick,
Can I ask you a question?
just one second. Mike Kamick wanted to say something.
Yeah, going back to square one, Joe Rush suggested that we put out those monitoring discs.
Yes.
To see how bad we're infested.
Yes.
And we talked, we're gonna start doing that when the ice went out. So we could put these discs in different bays and along the main channel to see what, how bad they are, and then you initially weigh them, then weigh them when you take them out to see how much is on there, and then weigh them again later on to see how much they've grown.
Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess that's what I kind of want to find from this discussion is, do we bring that next month for approval from the board to purchase those and get started once we get ice out? I would agree.
And maybe you could spot treatment according to where
Yeah, and I would agree.
Bad in one area versus another.
Just a moment on that. In the section that I wrote together on monitoring, it was brought out by John Sonnenberg from Highland Lake that he's more than willing to give us ACL his plan for monitoring and how to build these monitoring devices and what you do and how often you do it. So I was wondering, has any thought been given to contacting John for that information?
No, not yet. If you want to give me his information, Al, I can certainly do that.
I'll do that. Again, that was all in that document that I gave you.
Okay, that's fine.
Mark, were you gonna say?
I have a quick question. Jim Legg, 1280 Roosevelt. With ongoing management, is there any data? So the documents that I've read, it's either we're eradicating or we're living with it. Is there any data out there on lakes that have successfully managed with spot treatments to keep it at a reasonable level? Is there any success stories that people have found for living with it, but at a reasonable level with spot treatments?
I can answer that.
You're doing correct.
Yeah.
I can answer. Highland Lake actually does not want to eradicate, but they spot on a yearly basis. And that's because John Sonnenberg uses this as an educational vehicle to teach students in high school and college that are going into this area of expertise that how to do this, and so they can move forward with it in their educational program.
So there's actually a benefit to having CMC to it, an educational benefit. I think Dr. Hammond said that time, Mark Costco 174, that you could do the spot treatment. You could find the hot spots around the lake and you could do that. That seemed to be an ongoing process though. So I would look at what cost. Is it 100,000 this year and next year and next year and next year? If that adds up, 10 years adds up to $1 million without inflation or anything around it. Costs going up, so it's probably going to go into that. I'm not opposed to the eradication. I'd like to see them gone. I think we have good monitors in the lake now. Just pull your shore station out and take a look at it. But then seasonal, I know. My concern is the logistics involved in going forward. If you're going to eradicate them, I accept the science that he demonstrated in the speech or meeting that we had with them. I understand the graphs that they all look really good. I do think you can eradicate them. But again, I think as Steve Nelson pointed out, what are you going to do in 5 or 6 years? What are you going to do when that boat comes in next year and dumps Lake Carroll's water or the Mississippi's water in here and they begin again? And 4 or 5 years later, you go through the same process. And Hammond acknowledged at the time, I think you recall it, Al, you recall it, he said it, there's no guarantee they're not going to come back unless you take those steps to secure the water. And he goes, that's going to be your big headache, your big problem. So without saying it, he did acknowledge that they'll be back if we don't put controls in place to prevent them from coming back. After you spend the money to eradicate them, you have to have an ongoing method of policing, I'll say, to prevent the reintroduction and the reinfestation of the lake. I don't think it's a one and done. I don't believe it's a one and done treatment process.
I agree with you, Mark. I don't believe it is. I agree.
All right, Jim Legg, go ahead.
So to build on that, I agree with Paula that we shouldn't be the guinea pig. It feels like there needs to be there needs to be two paths. One is to observe what's going on in where they are working on eradicating in the coming year, and two is finding what is the management tier that, and with the least amount of effort with the most impact, as a secondary option while we're observing the work going on. It seems the most prudent approach.
I
That's it.
apologize for raising my voice. Our council 174. I apologize for raising my voice. I just wanted to finish my point for a change.
Yeah.
Sir.
Sir,
Is there any truth to this pumpkin seed fish that supposedly eats?
Well,
Red-eared sunfish?
the red-eared sunfish would be the one that we'd want to do. Lake Carroll stocked 40,000 of them. You know, Joe Rush says that you might see some reduction because of that, but it's certainly not an eradication and it's not a large reduction because of it. They do eat the zebra mussel though, but the pumpkin fish doesn't work well with the bluegill, which is one of our great fisheries out here. So we wouldn't want to go pumpkin fish, but we could go red-eared sunfish if we want. So.
Can we see some writings?
Sean?
Catfish.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know that that's, we have catfish here. We stock channels every year, so. Go ahead, Henry.
Okay, as far as the red-eared sunfish go, it would be nice to establish a population so that if we ever do eradicate, we have something that can act as a backup if we get reinfected. The problem with these zebra mussels, they multiply so prolifically that the red-eared sunfish can't eat enough of them. So if you have a small population of zebra mussels come in, it's possible they might control or put a dent in it. Now, on the other points, as for Paula's question about 104-degree temperature, the reason you go with a higher temperature on your washer is so that if you happen to miss a spot, it's the higher temperature is spreading some of that temperature to the spots where you might miss, like the frame on the boat, etc. You know, you're heating it up with the hotter water. Okay, the last point, if we do nothing, what is the cost? You're looking at 10 times as many next year. You're looking at people spending possibly $100 a boat to get the zebra mussels taken off of them. You're looking at closing the beach, closing the jumping rock. There's a cost. So all these things have to be weighed. Now, what weight you want to put on which one, that is a question.
And I don't know that anybody is suggesting that we don't do anything. I mean, I don't think that's, I mean, I think we definitely want to look at, you know, whatever we're using, and if it's Earth Tech. I talked with Norm Vandigo this week. He's got 5 or 6 boats in Nixon, and he said a lot of those boats didn't have any on there. We spray the beach often for algae, so is that part of it? I haven't heard from many others at Nixon. There may be some over there that have a lot, but so, I mean, one thing I've talked to Joe Rush about is start researching Earth Tech. Is there a benefit there of algicide too? And if that's the case, do we switch to Earth Tech because it's more effective on the zebras? I think we've got to continue to spray the beach. We will because of the algae. We need to add the jumping rock onto that too, so we can spot treat that. Joe Rush thought that maybe it was once a year that we'd have to do that, maybe twice. But I don't think anybody's suggesting we don't do anything.
Well, oh, lost my train of thought for a second. Well, the big thing is that we keep after it. I mean, President's Bay, my boat had a few on them. Boat a little further up the bay had more on them. Boat further up the bay had more yet. Okay, as far as the launching procedures and the rest, if people find, well, here, this is one thing. We have not told anybody we have zebra mussels. Our lake should be posted that this lake has zebra mussels. If you take your boat elsewhere, you should know that it's possibly contaminated. That would be a very basic thing.
Mississippi don't do that.
Say that
The
again?
landings at Mississippi don't say that.
You know? Yeah. Here, we've discussed zebra mussels. We've said we have zebra mussels. If the owners don't choose to read the Apple Core or listen to the videos, then they wouldn't know. We have more education to do, and I completely agree with that. I've asked Joe Rush to write an article for the Apple Core, letting owners know of things that they could do to their boats and their lifts prior to putting them in this year. That would help. So that's coming.
She lost her glove.
You know, I just got in. That's Henry.
So, yeah, there's definitely more education. And I think that's got to continue throughout the year and let owners know what they can do, that we have them, what we expect of them when they're launching and taking out. We've got to do all of that. And that's all going to be coming, and we're working on that. Jim Legg mentioned, other lakes. I think we can use Lake Carroll. Lake Carroll had them, and they have them still. They really didn't do much, but let's talk with them more. And Joe Rush is a consultant for both lakes, so I mean, he can kind of give us an idea. As Tom mentioned earlier, their fishery is outstanding right now. So their fishery really wasn't affected by the zebra mussels. So we can use these other lakes and learn from them. What went good, what went bad, what were the problems, and let's do that. Joe Rush has a program at about three or four other private lakes where the private shoreline owners can hire him to spray their shorelines. Now it's for weeds and algae, but if there's also that possibility, if we use Earth Tech where that could do zebra mussels, we could do that. So if you own private shoreline and you want to get your shoreline sprayed, that could be a help to your shoreline, but it's also a help to the whole lake with zebra mussels. So there's some ideas and some things that I think we can be doing right away in these next couple months to do what we need to. I agree with Paula that, it'd be nice to know how this happens what happened on a bigger lake. And if it's the New York lake, the 900-acre lake in Texas, were your rates the same, or did you have to change your rates? How many more or less applications did you have to have? And, what were the results from it? I've told the board, I think, we need to do something this year, Spot, let's try Earth Tech, but then let's meet with Dr. Hammond in a year and find out what he found out from these other lakes. I like Paula's idea of let's have communication with these lakes too, direct communication, so we can find out that too. And let's see what happens.
Dr. Hammond has been more than willing to give us contact information for other lakes so we can speak to their managers and people that have used him.
Yeah, I agree.
So that's fully available. Okay, on the question about the marina and slowing down people with their boats coming in, is you're going to shortly be in the situation where anybody that has a trailer for a boat is going to be pulling the boats out, even some of the pontoon boats, because the cost of taking the zebra mussels off and worrying about their investment, unless they get a shore station that they can lift them out of the water, which is a problem because K&S doesn't seem to have the time to put the existing ones in a quick manner. So you're going to see more traffic down at the marina. Your pool, when they rinse the pool and take water out of it, where does it go? It's been treated with chlorine. The ion solution that he puts out for controlling the zebra mussels is less than the ion solution they use in public water systems. Okay, our maintenance department has a license for spraying chemicals on the lake. So they technically could spray his chemical with proper supervision. And the big question that I see in my mind is, for a lot of private pools now, they're called freshwater pools because they don't use any chlorine, but what they use is an ion generator, which is exactly where he gets his product from. somewhere along the line, I think somebody's probably gonna come up with a solar powered one that people could mount on their dock and take and generate the copper ions, and take care of the zebra mussel locally. But these are all things that possibly are gonna come down the pike, and with the need being there, I think it's gonna happen pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I mean, and me talking with Joe Rush after the meeting, he said he would be happy to bid the $100,000 job to apply 200 acres on our lake. At $5,000 an acre, he said, absolutely. And he would actually give us a 10% discount. So, yeah, I mean.
Sean,
More money.
Yeah.
Sean, Joe Rush is also the one that told us 3.5 years ago we had zebra mussels, but to forget about it because there was nothing we could do about it. But our members have found that there are possibilities out there. So I'm not all that enthusiastic with his abilities.
He's pretty good.
It's debatable.
Sean, Sean,
Earth Tech DQ is not all that. 4 years ago, Rush was not that far off when he said that.
Right.
And I would agree.
As this has progressed and got more experience. in Earth Tech DQ,
He didn't say that.
They've seen more successes with it.
Yeah.
But do bear in mind, as Steve Nelson pointed out, that lake in Pennsylvania was a 29-acre quarry, a closed quarry. I believe it was next to the Susquehanna, if I said that correctly. River. It was a closed loop system. There's no way of any other watersheds except for runoff from the rain infiltrating it. So that, DQ being effective, it's not hard to see why it would kill them all, right? In a body of water like that. We have I consider it an open body of water because it's fed from one end and it feeds out the other end. And it's got a huge watershed around it. How many hundreds of acres feed runoff into this lake?
Correct. Go ahead, Bill.
Sean, it's my understanding that the water for the irrigation system for the golf course is pumped out of the lake. Is that true?
Yes.
Yeah, that is true, Bill.
Is there any plan in place to inspect our water intake and protect it for the future so that we don't incur damage to the irrigation system?
Correct.
Bill, part of the problem with that is the water sits in the irrigation pipes. So if they've gotten in, I'll call them the baby mussels, they can possibly start growing. The big question there would be probably the valve structure for turning the water on and off.
Is there a method to treat the water before it goes in there, or similar to what they're doing with some of the intake systems and some of the water systems for cities?
There hasn't been, but that's something that we're checking into and talking to the irrigation company about.
Because I mean, we know that it fouls up water intake systems, and we've got a potential there for damage to our irrigation system, I would think.
I would agree. That's why we want to make sure that we're doing what we need to there.
Okay.
Well, the bottom line is, what we have to do is we have to eliminate the zebra mussels coming into the lake. All of the treatment every 2 years, every 3 years, every 4 years isn't going to amount to a hill of beans unless we stop them from coming in here.
That bothers me, and we haven't really discussed it a lot, is education. Probably one of the biggest problems and probably one of the cheapest solutions of how you do it. I mean, look, 12 people show up today. How many people don't even know that hundreds of thousands of dollars what it would take to treat the lake? They don't care. They've been driving by the signs for years, on the way down to the marina and launch their boat. How do we educate people how serious it is, how much it costs? They write their check and they go. We don't see 2,700 people show up to any meetings. I don't know how you educate them. How do you force education on them?
Well, we know, I mean, the 1,800 boats that are registered out here, we know those people. So we can tailor things to those people.
You know, we almost have to educate them about,
Yeah.
force them to read something, acknowledge if they're online, checking the box, that you read it, I don't know what the answer is.
It's gonna be, yeah, and in here, I mean, security does have a launch person. We do it more in the springtime when people are first coming out, so it's probably gonna be handing stuff to them and talking to them about.
People know that, you know, it's gonna cost me a special assessment, maybe they would take it more serious. I would. I don't know. I don't know how you almost have to educate them, force them to know what's happening, what it costs, what's gonna cost them, if they don't, I don't know.
Is that something that they come back and send out the dues package at the end of the year? I mean, it's too late this year, obviously, but if you put a pamphlet in there, a couple pages of zebra mussel education, and maybe even require a sign up, if you have a registered boat, your dock number or your lot number, whatever, that you've read and acknowledged, you know, this is what the expectation is, that you'll do this with your boat when you ramp it and out. That's an educational aspect. I like that idea, because you can't, I mean, if people don't know the impact of the zebra mussels, I would venture to say that some folks don't know how serious, if it is serious, that we have them here. Some folks, weekenders, it's maximum enjoyment. That's what they want. They don't have time to consider all the other impacts and going on around the lake. And I'm not saying that in a bad sense. It's just they drive 2 or 3 hours from the city after a heavy week. They want to come out and enjoy the lake. So maybe that's a way to approach that. Almost maybe get something in the annual dues package or send it out before the season, the boating season begins really. Acknowledgement that you've read and understand the implications of not following these procedures. At least it might be a starting point.
Let's just assess the people with boats.
I'm kidding on that. I'm kidding on that. Okay.
You are not, because you don't have.
I don't have a boat out here. I'm kidding when I say that. I'm supposed to calculate.
You were kidding.
Well, behind every joke, there's a little bit of truth, ain't there?
On that question, it even has the question of kayaks, fishing lures, and like bait buckets. These all can be areas where contamination comes in. And as far as the question of birds are coming in naturally, the lake, the 29 or 39 acre quarry lake, as it hasn't been reinfected and it's right next to a stream. So I'm certain there's Canadian geese and the rest landing in it.
Yeah, sir.
There's actually very little evidence that birds bring in zebra mussels.
Okay.
In fact, I couldn't find anything.
Well, Joe Rush even said it probably came from a boat. I mean,
Or several boats.
several boats, yeah.
We could start testing their DNA.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like Carol.
Want me to check the geese this one?
Yeah, when you're oiling them eggs. You do it for
Take your microscope, Mike.
For Sean,
Yep.
if you go on the internet and research copper ion generators, there's a number of companies out there that make them for treating commercial water systems like Waco, Texas, etc. And I forget, I looked at a couple and I think with the one of them, 10,000 gallons an hour or 10,000 gallons a minute, I forget.
Okay.
So there are ways of treating the water.
Okay.
For Mike Harris, Mike, can you tell us about the procedures that we used to have at ACL for inspecting the boat?
A little bit. After talking to some of the people that have been here for a long time, security themselves did it when we had security down at the boat ramp. And basically it had to do with safety of the boat. The live wells, they did not check because obviously at that time they didn't have to worry about zebra mussels. But from what I understand, it was basically safety of the boat itself, making sure you had life jackets, things like that. Anybody else remember that?
Yep.
Yeah.
I first put a boat in 2001. That's what they were dealing with. Did you have to throw over a life jacket for everybody on board, fire extinguisher, was it accessible? Yep. The lanyard for the cutoff on the motor, et cetera, et cetera.
But it didn't have anything to do.
Nothing to do with, I don't recall anything to do with whether or not you were in another body of water.
Right.
Did you have a live well on the boat? I'm on my third boat here.
Back then, I think there was even more boats going in and out of here.
Probably. So we were fortunate, we had a dock from the get-go, so we've got the same dock for 20 years. So.
That's about all I can say because Marge Clark, I talked to her, she's been here since 1496. Well, seriously.
Before Columbus got here.
Yeah. Before Columbus got here.
That's not, we don't need that long.
Just one more point. Is there any information that we need to forward to Dr. Hammond as a result of this meeting?
Do we, it's talked about at that, the first Zoom, about a follow-up Zoom. Do we think that's necessary at this time?
Say that again.
At the Zoom last week, it was talked about a follow-up Zoom if that was necessary.
At first, I thought there was, but after listening to everyone and people that have done their homework, I personally don't think that we have to, but maybe.
So it sounds like there's some comments about the size of lakes that he's been able to mitigate. And if there was a question, if we are a large sized lake, I think if we looked at our lake as about 6 or 7 sections, we'd probably say that we don't have a very large lake at all. Those fingers that go off can be individually managed at the time of mitigation, and then the large sections done at after the fingers have been done. So, we probably are not a large lake at all, okay? But that 900 acre lake down in Texas that he's doing, it'd be an interesting case to follow, all right? But we could try to get some other people that have had lakes mitigated by him or eradicated by him, and we could get some follow-up from those people if you wanted.
He did point that out, Tom, that our lake was actually an ideal size. Basically, 500 acres or less was the ideal size for the eradication.
Yeah, when I was reading that, we were on the, what do they call it, milliacre or something like that, and the one thing I got in the mail, and we were in the high end of the small side or something like that.
Right. Yeah, well, being 400, 170 or 80 acres, we would be at the high side for small, right?
My one concern, and we didn't get to it in a Zoom meeting, we used to answer other questions, but is because of the bays and the amount of shoreline that we have. A lot of those comps that you're showing us were all bowls. They were round,
Right.
They didn't have the little nooks and crannies and blah, blah, you know what I mean? So that was a bit concerning to me.
I think he also noted, and Al might remember that they would do their study before they do the application. If you're gonna go eradication or mitigation, I think he said, and they would look for those hot spots where the highest concentrations were. And then they would apply it there and maybe go out a certain distance from the shoreline to ensure a kill so many feet down and whatnot. So I thought Hammond covered the topic very well. I paid attention to the whole thing, took a lot of notes.
He covered a lot, and I was interested. I was just disappointed. I wish he would have had something more closer to our size, but so I'd be curious to see on them
I think
lakes.
that's where they're getting, though. That's where they're just starting to get to.
Yeah.
I think the lake is in Austin, Texas, the 900 acre one.
I don't doubt that he couldn't eradicate them in here, but I go back to what you were talking about, keeping them out and how to control them.
Exactly.
I don't have a doubt that he could eradicate them, but at what cost do we eradicate them between the fishery, like Rory was talking, to just the overall expense that. I thought that one graph he had was 1733 an acre on that one lake.
That was back a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Probably got that lost that a little bit.
That was closer to 800,000 and.
Economies of scale, he's gotten a little bit bigger, his products now more, less costly to produce. So I thought around 1,500 an acre seems to be a number I thought I recalled.
Okay.
Al might remember better.
Yeah, no, I just seen that one graph that he showed, it was 1733 an acre, and I said, quick, do us a math, you know, it's like 788,000 or something like that, it was coming out to, at 440 acres.
He actually said he might, depending on how they did the shoreline, get that down to about 600 even.
Yeah.
You know, so that would come out, you know, you're roughly just under $300 a unit, up a unit, so.
Hi, this is Sean Cottrell, 182. I recognize that like today is not the meeting like where everything's going to be solved. And after hearing like all the sides of this, like it does seem clear that having an expectation of 100% eradication is just out there, and making a one-time $700,000 payment. We recognize that, you know, there would probably be the need for like that ongoing sort of approach. But what I'm wondering is if the board, I mean, like it sounds like an integrated pest management sort of solution is being crafted, right? Like there's a number of things, sounds like there's policies and procedures. There's, you know, multiple steps that can be taken. And, you know, I'd just like us to, when we're prioritizing these decisions, I'm just hoping we sort of consider keeping that population of zebra mussels below an economic injury level, right? And so that's like to the equipment, to the water intakes, to the fishery itself, you know, maintenance for boats and things like that, as well as considering like the adverse effects, right? Avoiding those. And again, like the fishery is there because we don't want to kill the fish. We don't want people like walking and cutting their feet on rocks. And I mean, like the rock is a big thing for ACL. So, you know, I think that's really cool. And, you know, I think we've realized that there just isn't a silver bullet here. But what I'm wondering, you know, is it also worth exploring like that federal funding route? I mean, again, like this whole, and I just hearing the conversation there, I'm wondering if there's like you know, an ad hoc commission, or if there's consideration like for forming a group who can potentially see like, is there any funding available? And if so, would that potentially offset or at least give money to contribute to whatever that plan is that ACL, you know, that you got, like the board of directors decides to take? Because just sort of looking at like the biological control by bringing in those red ear sunfish, right? We talked about chemical control, but that preventive piece, you know, I think is something that there's going to have to be some sort of equilibrium, right? Mechanical controls can be used. You know, like we don't have to use a chemical at all at the lake. Like if there's zebra mussels on the rock, someone can go out there like with an ice scraper and like scrape them off the side. And, you know, we might only need to do that once a year. So I think there's just a lot more to be, you know, to consider when like this plan is being developed. But that approach is called an integrated pest management solution. I mean, that's like what the University of Illinois calls it in their training programs. And so, you know, I would encourage the board to consider, you know, sort of multifaceted, comprehensive solution that does. I mean, it's again, like I don't envy your guys' position right now because there's a lot sort of hanging in the balance. You know, the recreation enjoyment of the lake from actually getting into the water versus enjoying the sport fishing aspect. And I mean, you know, nobody wants to be facing those long lines or have extra costs, you know, every time they want to put their boat in the water. And you know, it does seem like buying like the hot water pressure doesn't make sense unless like there's a commitment to have the staffing and, you know, understanding what that all is. So it would be insightful to kind of see like what the costs are associated with each of those different components, to, you know, the ideas that were just thrown out today, so that when the board is considering it, like there is like a finite sort of economic sum tied to 700,000 for one-time eradication, and then like every 3 to 5 years afterwards, I'm assuming the price would just go up. And I mean, I don't think anyone would be happy with, you know, having like $1 million fee, you know, in 5 more years, just for another, you know, bout at eradication. So again, just that integrated pest management approach, knowing again, there aren't lakes like our size, there aren't lakes with our shoreline that have had this. So it might be of interest to like the USGS, there might be interest to other federal agencies. And there was also a comment earlier about reporting zebra mussels. And I know like we talked about sort of communication to the local membership. But I also believe there's it's either the USGS, or I came across it when sort of, you know, getting up to speed for this meeting. There is a federal sort of like resource where if you are at a body of water, you can actually report that there's zebra mussels, and then that actually goes on sort of a national list. And that's actually how Dr. Hammond, like, you know, brought up that graph that showed like the spread of the zebra mussels over time. So anyways, there's again lots to consider. And some of those things like reporting, you know, to like that federal agency, like doesn't seem like it would have any cost. And then would also be another step to say, here's how we're educating people. We have this program, all that stuff. So I think, you know, all of the recommendations today have been awesome and really are informing the conversation, because it does seem like, again, there's no simple solution to this. And this is a very complex problem at this point in time. Thanks.
Can I just build off of Sean's comment? Yeah, just real quick. That I think everything you just said, Sean, makes perfect sense. The only thing I'd build is it would be ideal if we can identify what the level of zebra mussels that is the balance that we can live with, and then and from that we build that infestation plan around, management plan around it. Because I feel like we'll go off and come up with this plan without having what the goal that we should be anchoring it on. So I first step from my perspective is understanding what is the balance, where is that the sweet spot that then we build the plan against.
Agreed and well said.
Paula?
I did try to see if there were any grants available to do this kind of work. I couldn't find anything.
Okay.
Again, you're struggling against the fact that both at the federal level and the state level, they do not agree that eradication is possible, and they're not going to fund something that they don't believe is possible. Now, maybe I missed something, but I sure couldn't find anything.
Okay. Mark?
Yeah, I thought Sean brought up some really good points there, and I look at it as logistics, you know, being strategic versus being tactical and going out there long term. What are like I said earlier, we don't want to do a one and done thing and forget about it because they will be back. So how are you going to go forward and look at it? I'm for the eradication, and it's going to come at a cost. You know, I look at it, if my vote, which stands for bring over another 1,000 to Kevin, if it breaks down because of the zebra mussel, it's going to be more expensive than $400 special assessment to do a one-time eradication. Well, what are we going to do going forward to mitigate or control, mitigate and control the invasive species or the pest management program that Sean was talking about? Is really a great idea. And I think you have to have one with the other. If you're going to do the eradication or even a mitigation, spot treatment, you have to have that other plan going forward. And as far as the federal funding, I did find some on that, and it is available. However, everyone, yes, Paul, everyone that I read about required a state-approved watercraft inspection program. That's pretty costly. And it requires man hours and resources to do that. And so your staffing budget and operating budget and everything is going to go up much to everybody's current dismay if you seek the federal funding. It didn't seem like a lot of money, but it did seem like if you could get it, I think in Illinois, I want to say the number I saw was $14 million was available for it, but it required a watercraft inspection program, state approved.
Barb, Henry.
Hey, this is El Sopcich. Can I make a comment?
No.
I have information from John Sonnenberg from Highland Lake, and I was working with him on grant funding from the state of Illinois. They received $72,000 from the Illinois, an Illinois grant last year. And we thought if we work together, and maybe Paula, if you would be able to get somebody to help work on this, that we could get our Republican representative and he would get the Democratic representative from his district that worked on getting the $72,000 together, and get both of those together, and both of us get money, one lump sum from the state of Illinois. We were thinking in the tune of $2 million. That would help, wouldn't it? But I would like to have somebody from that commission help.
Once you guys decide what you, all conservation can do is give you our best suggestions. We're not even going to make a motion for you guys. We are probably going to come up with a suggestion of where we think we should go. But once you guys have to decide where you're gonna go before we can look for money, because I think we have to be pretty specific in any kind of grant request. I obviously didn't look in the right places because money's available, but, yeah, you guys have to decide, you know, are we looking at, we want $50,000 to do mitigation? Do we want $700,000 to do eradication? Yeah, I mean, you're gonna have to make up your mind, but then conservation / me will help if there is funding to be had.
Okay.
And that didn't say that the money is actually available, because the state senate has to authorize that. They have had it available though, and it has gone up over the course of the last several years, so it's not like a one and done thing with them.
We also need to know what the inspection is going to be too.
Well, yeah, I don't understand what the water, state water traffic inspection.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
You know, from the state level, it may be much more, and I've voted Lake Michigan and the chain of lakes and whatnot. They do have more resources on the water at any given time to patrol and whatnot. There's always somebody there. We used to launch in Carpentersville, I think it was. And, they had people there all the time, looking at what's going on and whatnot. So I thought, and Al's object might know more of this. I thought I read that Lake Holiday instituted a ramp fee, and I want to say it was $50 to launch there. And I think the purpose was maybe to slow down the number of folks that launched in and out over there. And that's not a very big lake. I think it's about 110 acre lake, something on that order. $50 is quite a bit. You know, if you don't have a spot to put your boat on the water, you ramp in once, twice, 3 times on a weekend, it gets pretty pricey for folks if you're going to do something.
$50 a shot. Thanks for.
I believe that's what it was, 50 bucks. I'm not sure if that was for the property owners, but it sounds like they have other people that come in as well.
Okay.
Yeah. Go keep their boat on the water
Oh,
during now. And I believe they
nice.
put a locked gate by their ramp. They have 2 launches, I think, there. And they have locked access to it, so they can control the access.
Territory had a lock gate too when you're launching. You just call it security, but they just open the gate and let you in. You know, they didn't look you're supposed to look your boat over, but you know.
Just one more point that from Dr. Hammond's session. When he took a look at the lake, and it was a very overview kind of estimate on what he recommended, and he came up with costs. He also brought up the fact that if we didn't need all the product, that would it would reduce the amount of cost that we'd have to incur, and that would be big. And he would like to visit the lake just to take some readings of water and determine how infected we are. And that's a big issue because, you know, they're microscopic and so on. But that is important to know where we stand. Thank you.
I guess in my chair, I'd sooner brace for the worst and hope for the best. You know, I mean, to sit there and say, hope that we could get by for less. I'd sooner brace for the worst. Yeah, it never works for me. I don't know. I kind of like
talking about the less.
Yeah,
You'd have to plan for the worst case, wouldn't you?
right. You'd have to, and if we got by for 500,000, say if you're one already, that'd be wonderful. But
We could build another boat ramp.
yeah, sure. I still worry a lot about the fishery. I do. I'd like to know more about it. And I know Gordy probably would too. And it concerns me a bit.
Can I make a comment on that?
Sure.
Aaron.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Aaron Erdenberger, 7A189. I love the presentation from Dr. Hammond. There was a lot of information. I do get really hung up on the idea that he is a salesman trying to sell product. There are lots of lakes that have been battling zebra mussels for 25 plus years. I lived in Wisconsin on the Mississippi River where I saw the start of zebra mussels in the river. I saw how it affected local fisheries, jobs, and it is a big problem. However, there are hundreds and hundreds of lakes and biologists and local game officials that have done everything from nothing to all kinds of steps to try to control or eradicate zebra mussels. I feel that Dr. Hammond's approach is the most extreme. He did comment that he was not an expert in fish, and that's concerning to me because a lot of the comments that he made about where he's been testing this product is in water supply lakes that supply cities where maybe the fish supply or the fishery isn't such a big deal. There was a comment made about restocking the lake, which our lake is not restocked 100%. We have natural reproduction in a lot of species. So not quite sure we have all the information to make this decision yet. And I'd be very interested, someone or a speaker on the on the biological side of the experience of lakes that have done nothing versus going to this extreme. Because maybe once we reach that threshold of how many zebra mussels will live in Apple Canyon Lake, maybe it turns out to be not as bad as we thought, because the lake is deep and zebra mussels don't live in deep water as well as they do in shallow water. So maybe as far as surface area and volume of our lake, we're not dealing with as much contained as we think. But I just feel like we've heard half of the story. We've heard from somebody trying to sell us product, and we've got all the information of what it can do. What's the other half of that story of communities and lakes that have done nothing or a little bit of mitigation, but risked our fisheries, not risked the large cost.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay, Barb, Henry again.
yes,
The question of the live wells can be easily handled. A garden sprayer with a 10% bleach solution in it. And basically you're looking for the live well to be reasonably dry. So all you need is enough of the bleach solution in there to wet everything, and you've killed the babies. So that's a relatively easy solution. And as
Okay.
far as the fishery goes, is supposedly the study from Minnesota is supposed to be out shortly. They're going through the data. That should answer a lot of our questions, because the reason Minnesota is so concerned is because of their fishery.
okay. So we've been going about an hour here. I think that we've kind of talked about a lot of ideas, and the boards will need to discuss what we're gonna do to move forward. So,
Yeah.
I would
got some
surely
ideas here.
hope, like Nolan said, like if we have another workshop or we talk, we can get more people here and learn
Well,
about this. I
We've
think
got
Nolan-
25 on Zoom right now.
Oh, okay,
so, I mean,
that's great. That's-
Yeah. So for a workshop, it's actually pretty.
that's a
pretty
good
so,
attendance.
yeah.
That is good.
So thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming, and thank you for staying, and appreciate your input.
Thank you all. Great conversation today.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend, everybody.